Glad to have everybody on. Let me add Austin in here too. Glad to be here again. Glad to have all you on. And we're excited to be with Dana today. We've got Zach here from Dana. Go ahead and let Zach introduce himself, who he is, and where he comes from.
My name's Zach Heisey. I'm usually coming to you from the Dana garage, but today I'm coming to you with the good people from BroncBuster, and I'm excited to be a part of the this little roundtable that we're having here today.
And we also have Austin. A lot of you guys have been on before, met Austin before. Austin, go ahead and say hi and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, Austin here at Bracken Machine. We work at BroncBuster back to back on new products, development, testing, R&D, all that.
Yeah, Austin's been a key part of what we do and what products we've been able to bring to you guys. And so I like bringing Austin on with me because when we get to the part where we can start asking, you guys can ask us questions on other things. He's one of our other experts. But tonight, our main expert is Zach. And our main thing that we're going to be talking about with you guys is the new front drive unit, what that is, and why you guys might need that. But before we do that, I'd like to just take a minute, and I'm gonna talk about the event in Katemsi next month. Wheeling for a Cause. If you get a chance, go check out our website. It's wheelingforacause.org. This is a nonprofit organization where we are raising funds for a build for, the guy's name is TJ, and he is a wounded veteran, wounded back in 2012, double amputee, and we've got a really awesome build. Austin is a big part of that build that we're doing too. Once we get it done, it'll be coming to Austin's shop. We're going to add a few things to it. But again, the website, Katemsi Rocks, it's here in the hill country of Texas. Usually that time of year, we should have some pretty nice weather. So there's good camping spots. There's RV spots. The cabins are all taken. But there in Mason, Texas, there's also housing. So don't wait until the last minute. We encourage everybody to get on and register now so that we can start making plans. With that, I got a little surprise I'd like to show everybody. So this here is a cool guitar that Ted Nugent sent to us, signed by Ted Nugent here. And now, I guess right here.
Hold it up, Tyler. This way. There we go.
Okay, so this here will be one of our auction items that we're going to auction off at the event. And so you'll have a chance to win this. Really excited about it. And there is a good chance that we might get to see Ted put his fingers on these and play a little music for us. So last time I talked to him, he's trying to make his schedule work and see if he can be there. So kind of a very cool guy and awesome that he's helping support this. And we've got a lot of other great support out there for this as well. And so we're excited about it, and it'll be a good time. I mean, there's going to be a good contest. BroncBuster on a lot of these parts that we're going to be talking about tonight will make it possible for me to get up some lines that aren't really possible without them. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start talking with Zach here about some of the things. And first thing, Zach, is I get this question all the time. What is a front drive unit?
A front drive unit, or FDU as we call it for short, is essentially your front axle. And we call it a front drive unit as opposed to a front axle because it's when you have an independent front suspension, how the axle is created and designed is very different. The axle center section, it never moves when you have an independent front suspension. It stays solid. The front drive shaft angle never changes. And what's changing with the suspension moving up and down is simply the half shafts. So we call it a front drive unit because it is essentially the front axle made for an independent front suspension.
And so with that, a lot of questions that I get out there is what options are available at this point?
Well, we've got a couple options that are coming online. Dana has the what we call the Ultimate Dana 44 front drive unit, or the Ultimate Dana 44 Advantek FDU, and it's based similar to the front drive unit Model 210 that's in the Broncos now, but it's been significantly upgraded for the aftermarket. One of the drawbacks of the original, even the best front drive unit that you can get in a Bronco right now, is the shaft spline that goes into the differential is a 29 spline, whereas the aftermarket unit, it has a larger 32 spline differential, so a significant increase in diameter and tooth count. And the other thing is the deepest gear ratio that you can get in a stock Bronco is 4.7. And along with that, unfortunately, that's also the deepest ratio that you can fit in a stock Model 210 carrier or even the 190. You can't get a deeper gear into that carrier without running into some significant problems.
But wait a minute. I mean, I see people out on the internet right now that are putting deeper gears in there. So what's the problem with that?
Well, they're on borrowed time. I can tell you that right now, because the amount of clearance between the ring gear itself and the wall of the carrier is significantly less than what we allow. Because as the pinion head gets smaller, the ring gear has to move over to get closer to it, and the ring gear gets thicker because the diff flange doesn't change, and that thicker gear moves closer to what we call the carrier side, where the pinion is mounted, the carrier side of the front drive unit, and it gets too close to the wall. In some cases, it actually contacts the wall, like it'll physically lock up the unit. In other cases, you've only got maybe a millimeter of clearance, and it's not good enough, because what it's going to do is it's going to pinch the oil essentially against that carrier. It's going to churn the oil, and it's going to make an incredible amount of heat, and you're going to start blowing all the oil right out the vent, because you're going to build a bunch of heat and you're going to degrade the oil significantly fast. That's if it even assembles, which most times it won't. You're going to blow all the oil right out of the vent. You're going to have a ton of churning losses, and you're going to destroy your unit.
Okay. So, and a question that we have for you, and this is something that me and Austin have worked some time on. We've experienced with the stock M210, and I don't have a picture to throw up, but that tube is a major fail point on the M210. So Tell us what this does to reinforce that.
Sure. So I don't know if you can click on your picture there and make it a little larger, because I'm going to talk about a little bit of detail. The first thing we did was make the tube out of cast iron instead of aluminum. The stock one is aluminum, and if you could just scroll up to the top of that picture, that's what I want to talk about. So the first things first, it's cast iron, so it's significantly stronger. The second part is the mount that we have on there. It's actually a detachable mount that we call a flip bracket, and in the position that it's in right now, it'll bolt right into a Bronco. If you flip it over, and basically so the offset is toward the outside, it'll bolt into a Ranger, a current production Ford Ranger. So not only does this front drive unit fit the current Broncos, it fits the current previous generation Ford Ranger.
Okay.
Nice.
And so is this option, so we talked about this option being available for the 32 spline. What about these guys? So there's a lot of guys out there that already have bought RCVs, and they're running the 29 spline. So what options do we have for them?
Yeah, well, Dana's also has a 29 spline version of this upgraded front drive unit. Obviously, it still has the 29 spline differential, but it has the better carrier, so you can run the deeper gears. It doesn't have the same type of plug-on CV that you see pictured in this one. It's got the stock style CV. You can see how the picture on the left, the shafts both are essentially male, and they reach into the axle to engage the splines. Right, that's the picture. And still a good unit. And those Spicer Extreme half shafts that you're showing there are still an upgrade over the stock Bronco half shafts. There's a little more angle and a significantly more amount of strength in those half shafts.
So then you said now we go to the 32 spline.
Right.
What main advantages are we gaining then out of the 32 spline?
Well, A couple of things. So the shafts obviously are larger that go into the differential. So the part on the top on the right, and then we have what's called an intermediate shaft, and that's the shaft that runs from the passenger side of the differential out through the tube to that wheel end. And they do that. That's done that way because you have to have the differential offset because you can't have it right in the center. That's where the engine is. And you have that intermediate shaft to keep torque steer from happening. Because if you would have a real long half shaft and a real short half shaft, the longer one would wrap up and you wouldn't actually get the speed out of the passenger side that you would get out of the driver's side. So they would spin at different speeds and you'd have what they call torque steer. So that's why you have an intermediate shaft, so that it has that same constant speed. And then your half shafts are approximately the same length that go down to the wheels. So it helps with suspension geometry and it helps with torque steer. Anyhow, so you've got a significantly larger intermediate shaft. You've got a significantly larger shaft that goes into the other side of the differential because it's 32 spline. The CV bells that we call them, where the Spicer Extreme sticker is, that's the inner bell, and then the outer bell. Those are larger in diameter, and the bar shaft that's in the middle, that's a 35 spline bar shaft. So again, significantly upgraded over the OE units.
Okay. And I can tell you that from experience, I actually went out and tested these. As everybody knows, BroncBuster, that's what we do. We test these. And so here a few weeks ago, I took it out and just tried my best to break them first on my wife's with 42-inch tires. We broke other things. I think I told Zach we broke a front drive shaft. But those held up very well. Very impressed because the stuff I was doing, the stock ones I would have blown out. Then I've got the 32 splines on BroncBuster, and we took it out into where we're going to have our vent in K2 to kind of run some of the stuff and kind of get a feel for what we're going to be doing out there for our event. And I had those CVs in some situations where anything else I would have broke, and they held up great. So I will say that I will stand behind them. I think these are a great product. I wanted to say this at the beginning, but I kind of wanted to wait until we get people on. You guys, one of the things that I'm doing tonight is, and we're going to do this every week. If you're on, say hi, comment. We got Justin that's in the background that's kind of moderating this. He's going to take down the names, and next week we're going to hold a drawing. Everybody that was on and engaged today, we're going to have a drawing, and we're going to give away a prize worth $500. So we really want this to be an engagement to get your guys' feedback, and we have a whole bunch of questions, and we're gonna get through a few more that I had, and then we're gonna jump through. Justin's gonna start highlighting a few of these, and we'll ask Zach, because that's mainly what we want to do is get through your guys'. So one of the questions that I get a lot of times, Zach, is this a do-it-yourself project, or do I need to hire a mechanic
to install the front drive unit?
Front drive unit and the half shafts, yeah.
Yeah. If you can install a lift kit, you can install one of these front drive units. There's no setting up of gears. There's no measuring of angles. There's no welding. There's no fabricating. It is literally a bolt-in unit. You've got to take the wheels off. You've got to let loose the knuckles so you can get the half shafts out. And then it's just a matter of unbolting the three separate mounts that hold the front drive unit in, and then rotate it down out of position. And then the new one goes in exactly the same way. It mounts exactly the same way. The front drive shaft hookups the same way. And then depending upon which version you get, you either reinstall your 29 spline shafts or you install the 32 spline shafts, and they install the same way. And then you install them into your knuckles and put it all back together in reverse order of how you took it apart. And it really is something with basic hand tools in your driveway, in your garage, that you can do. Dana has a couple of videos that we filmed when we installed both the front drive unit, the half shafts, and our semi-float Dana 60 rear axle. So we already have those, and those are live on the SpicerParts YouTube channel. It's on our landing page on SpicerParts.com and on DanaAftermarket.com. And I think, Tyler, you probably linked to those on your site too, right?
I believe so, but Justin's moderating the back. Justin, if we don't, let's get that linked, because I will say that it's a good video, very well done. and has good information. And really, I've done this several times. I don't have a lift. A lot of my R&D and stuff that I'm doing here at my house in my garage. And part of that is because I want to have a feel for what you guys are going to be doing. And I've changed out drive units over and over on broken ones before the new one came out. And then I've now installed 2 of these into our vehicles. And it is something that you can do in your, if you have mechanical ability and tools. I mean, it's not crazy tools. I suggest having a hand to help you, but it's not that hard. What about what else? I guess so. If we want to put in a new front drive unit and we're going to re-gear, we're going to go to, let's say, 488 gears. What else is needed? What else are they going to need? Because we can't just throw in the front and not do anything on the back, correct?
Right. Obviously, whatever ratio you pick in your front driving, you've got to match to the rear. And Dana has what we call the Model 220 or the Dana 44 Advantek rear. We have upgraded gear sets for those. We have the expanded gear ratio, so we have 488 and 513 and 538. We already have those gear sets available for your current axle. It's just a matter of popping the shafts, pull the diff and the ring and pinion out, install the new one, and put it back together to match your front, and get the programmer and tell the vehicle what the new gear ratio and new tire size is, and you're ready to go.
Yeah, and none of that is all that hard, but I will say that I'm going to try and do a video on the programmer, because if you don't do it just specifically the way that the instructions tell you, if you miss a step, it does cause a little bit of havoc. But it's really not difficult. There's a little bit to it, so hopefully we can give you guys something there. Let's see. So,
Hey, Tyler, can we back up real quick?
Yes, absolutely.
Zach, you talked about in the beginning about the free angle. This comes up a lot. People want to know, how much more angle do we get? How much stronger? I know these are kind of loaded questions, but you want to dive into that a little bit?
Well, we'll start with the 29 spline, this 29 spline shafts, because the CV bells, just because of the way the unit is, we couldn't grow those significantly bigger than the OE ones, just simply because of the package constraints. So the way we get the strength out of those is better materials, chromoly and things like that. So we have tested them. We put an OE one and we put our aftermarket ones on the test machine. I don't have the numbers in front of me to give you, but I can tell you it was a significant upgrade in strength. And for the 29 spline, there's a few degrees, 4 or 5 degrees angle increase for the 29 spline Spicer Extreme shafts versus the OE shafts. Now, when you get to the 32 spline shafts, that's where, because we also designed the front drive unit, that's where we could really go nuts. We could blow out the CV bells. The inner and outer bells are significantly bigger, a lot more angle, at least 10 degrees more angle, and a significantly larger spline bar that's in the center. Larger diameter and bigger splines to really make the whole thing. Basically where that, I saw a quick question about, hey, it looks like we're moving the fuse, and that is a little bit, when you upgrade things, something still needs to break, and it should still be something that's easy to replace, like a half shaft. One of the things that we can't currently control is the hub units that are on the Bronco. So the spline that goes into that hub unit is now pretty much the fuse. That's the smallest spline in that system, if you will. And when we put it on our test machines, what we call an ultimate test, we literally just twist it until something gives up. It was that spline going into the hub unit every time. Whereas in some of the stock ones, sometimes it was a spline bar, sometimes it was the inner CV, sometimes it was the outer. It was kind of all over the place. But ours, we're breaking them consistently at that wheel spline, because that's not something we can control or make any bigger, because the hub unit is the hub unit. But if you're going to have something break, that is hands down the easiest thing to change.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Did I answer your question?
So one of the questions that I get a lot too is up until here, I think a week and a half ago, we were telling everybody that this is only available for basically the Sasquatch, the M210 with Sasquatch. We have some developments on that. Can you share with us what we can now put this in?
The great thing about the Ford programmer that came out, what we call phase one was it lets you change gears a little bit, like up to 470 and tire size up to like 37s, but it wouldn't let you turn off what we call the FAD, or the front axle disconnect. So if you've got a model that has that front axle disconnect, you weren't able to program around that, meaning turn it off, because if you remove the unit and remove the front axle disconnect when you take the unit out, then you don't have excuse me, then you don't have that front drive unit module that the computer needs to see. So fast forward to phase two that came out a couple of weeks ago, we can now do that. You can program your gears up to and including 538 ratio in the axles. You can program out that that front axle disconnect, and you can run the tires up to the Ford limit of 37s, whatever that number is on revs per mile, and you can really open up your Bronco. It's exactly what we have on the Dana Bronco that you can kind of see over my shoulder. We're running 40-inch tires. We're running on our Ultimate Dana 44 front drive unit and our semi-float Dana 60, and we love it.
Okay, so you brought up another term that I get a lot of questions on. What is the semi-float Dana 60, and when is that available?
So the semi-float Dana 60, the semi-float portion of that refers to the wheel end and the role of the axle shaft and the axle tube. When you have a semi-floating axle, as we call it, the axle shaft has two jobs. First job, it's got to support the weight of the vehicle. So the tire itself bolts to the end of the flange of an axle shaft, and that axle has to hold up the vehicle. Job number two is to transmit torque. So it gets the torque from the differential in the center section. So it's got to transmit the torque, and it also has to carry the load of the vehicle. Now, if you look at like the Ultimate Dana 60s for some of the Jeeps, those are what we call a full float design. When you have a full float design, the axle shaft only has one job, and that's to transmit torque. Because when you bolt a tire onto a full float axle, you're not bolting it onto the axle shaft, you're bolting it onto a hub. And that hub rides on bearings, and it sits on a spindle. So the housing does the work of holding up the weight of the vehicle, and the axle shaft just has to turn it. So the reason we went with a semi-float design on the Bronco is, again, back to that front hub unit. We don't control that. We'd love to just blow it out and make it 8 lug and put a full float in there. But again, we can't control that front hub unit. We have to play with what it is. So the way to keep the lug pattern, the 6-bolt lug pattern that's on the Bronco, is to make it a semi-float design. Now that doesn't mean that we just use a little single taper roller bearing like they do on the current Model 220 or most semi-float axles that you find. We of course put our aftermarket touches on it, and we started with our 35 spline Dana 60 center section. So we have a 35 spline Dana 60 center section. We've got all the choice of gear ratios. We've got a ARB or electric locker, and we've got the 35 spline shafts. But at the wheel end, instead of being just the single tapered roller that some of you might be familiar with, we actually have a dual row tapered roller bearing. So it's actually 2 opposed tapered roller bearings that's secured onto the shaft with a nut and a locking feature, and then the tone ring, so that you've got an enormous bearing out there taking that load. It's significantly stiffer, it's a lot stronger, and it resists the bending of the shaft. And the diameter is a lot larger than the 1.5" 35 spline. It actually steps up several diameters till it gets out to where that bearing is. So I wish I had a cutaway or one to show you, but it's a significantly larger axle shaft and stronger axle shaft than the stock ones.
Perfect.
And as far as availability, we're really hoping it's first quarter next year for the semi-float Dana 60s.
Okay. So now I know how pretty Zach is, and he looks like an engineer, but I met Zach out on the trail. I'm gonna talk a little bit about Zach's wheeling abilities, and know that not only is he an engineer, and helping design this stuff. But, Zach, how long have you been wheeling yourself?
Oh, geez. Now you're going to make me tell everybody how old I am. I've been wheeling 25 years.
Okay. And I'll tell you, I've been out on the trail with him. When we were at Easter Jeep Safari, was the first time I met Zach. I got invited on a night ride, and one of the best night rides I've ever been on, because Zach he drives a tough ship. It's go, 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 and he doesn't let anybody stop and talk. We got through that trail, which is, my wife really appreciated. It drives her nuts sometimes how long things take. But anyways, I figured it was worth noting that, you have a lot of engineers that maybe know things on paper, but do they actually go out and firsthand test and understand and feel and know what these things need? And so I wanted to bring that up, that Zach is not just an expert in the field of designing these, but also in using them. So
yeah, it was a lot of fun to take the Bronco out there with kind of alongside of our fleet of Jeeps and really go head to head with those guys. And the Bronco did everything that all the Jeeps did. Hell's Revenge and all the other trails that we went on, I could rip off a bunch of them. We did break. Yep. We broke the stock tie rod ends, like so many people have. Half-inch socket, welded onto the bar that was beat back into some kind of shape, got us off the trail. And that's actually how we met with Tyler. He came over and helped us out. He had a spare stock rod and his bushing kit, which was a big help. And we've since luckily been able to step away from that because we got the new Ford steering rack that is just, if you're going to run big tires, 37 or larger, man, it's a have to, because it actually makes it steerable again. I'm not going to lie, when we had 40-inch tires in the stock steering rack, steering
all the time.
It was almost like you didn't have power steering at all. You had to think way ahead of time when you were going to turn. And now it's just like having hydro assist on a big Jeep with 40-inch tires. Yep. It steers beautifully.
And I'm running it on 42-inch tires, and I can attest to the same thing. So I'll tell you, same thing with Zach, and so that'll be something exciting for you guys coming up soon too. But anyways, before I'm going to let Justin go back, and there's questions on here that have been popping up, and I appreciate the questions, guys. There's some really good ones, and so some of the things that I wanted to ask Zach are asked by you guys. So I figured maybe we can just kind of go back and ask a few of these, if you would, Justin.
I see one that popped up. Someone asked about the factory plug for the e-locker.
Yes,
the answer to that is yes. It's the same locker that would come in a Bronco that had a locker. So if you currently have a locker and you upgrade to the Ultimate Dana 44 front drive unit, your plug is going to plug right in there. So it's going to work from the factory switches exactly like the factory intended. Now, what happens if you got a Model 190 or a Model 210 that didn't have a front locker? We have a pigtail that plugs in, and it's a simple on-off solenoid. It matters which one is power and ground, because there's a little diode in there. But it's as simple as putting it on any aux switch or an S-pod, or however you want to control all your other functions. If you've got the aux switches up on the windshield, however it is, it just needs to be a simple on-off switch to control that locker. So
in other words, that pigtail could then go to, I believe it's the front driver's side is where all the aux switches wiring is, and that's where it could be then turned. There's 5-6 switches, I think, auxiliary switches.
Yeah.
Any one of those could take care of that, right?
Now, keep in mind the pigtail itself is like yay long. It's enough to have to wire it. Yeah. Plug in the unit. So you're going to need to supply the wire that's in between, but you've got the hard part done, which is the pigtail to the FDU.
So I know one of the wires is a black and one of them is a red. So the instructions will let them know as far as which side is which. Yep. I can almost visualize which side is which, but I don't want to say wrong. So I pulled it apart a few times.
Yep.
Okay, so what was one of the other? Let's see, provision, somebody? Yeah. All right, do you think it is necessary to get the FDU if I already have the Extreme 29 spline CVs?
Do I think it's necessary to get an FDU? Well, if you want to re-gear, and I don't know who asked that question, or if they have.
So just Swingman is who asked it.
Okay.
Um,
They didn't have to say how big their tires are, did they?
No, they didn't.
It's not a big deal. Obviously, if you got the 29 spline Extreme CVs, thank you for being a customer, first of all, and I hope you are really happy with those shafts. You can still upgrade to one of Dana's units. You can just get the 29 spline front drive unit instead of the 32 if you already have the shafts. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to change your gear ratio. Because I don't know what your front drive unit may be 446 currently, or I forget the other one is 410 or 373, something low. And if you've got bigger tires on it, your Bronco is the engine operating range is not matched to the wheels and tires, the gears and tires. So you've got to match it as a system. So that's why when you put big tires on, it's important to match the gear ratio. Now I know that the transmission will hide a lot of sins because it's got a lot of gears, but it's still going to cut down on drivability and power and fuel economy when you don't have the gears matched to the tires.
Yeah, I went from 8 miles per gallon on BroncBuster running 40-inch tires on the 2.3 liter to about 15 miles per gallon just by going to the correct gears.
Yep.
So big difference. So he said he's running 35-inch tires, so he's not worried about re-gearing. The only other thing I guess that I would say advantage would be the tube at that point, because I haven't had failure on the actual drive unit on the M210 in any other situation, especially not with 35s. But the only other advantage that I can think of would be that tube. Is that correct at that point?
Should be.
Okay.
Hey, Zach,
All right.
you want to talk about the people who think they're going to run, what is that, the 513 or 538s? Mm-hmm. Different gear ratio than that? The interference with the housing?
Sorry, I didn't see that question when it went rolling by. What was the question?
No, it's not a question that came in. It's a question about the people who are going to run a lower gear ratio than the 538s, Tyler? Is that what's up there?
Well, no. See, if you're going to run lower than the 4.7 stock ratio, if you want to get into 488, 513, 538, that's when you need to go to one of the Dana front drive unit, because we have that new carrier that has that additional room. We talked about that just a little bit in the beginning, that you don't physically have the space to bolt the carrier together. And I know there's some good people out there like, well, I'll just re-gear my front. And like I told you, it's possible, but it's certainly not recommended. Some of them, they will physically lock up. You'll put the clamshell bolts together, and the unit will physically lock up because the ring gear is now physically against the case. Whereas when you have our upgraded carrier, it's got the room for the ring gear, and it's got the appropriate amount of room around the ring gear so that you're not shearing that oil and churning that oil, and just degrading the oil significantly and getting all that extra heat into the system.
Perfect. So I'm gonna throw a kind of fun one up here. So Walter's one of our good friends from the Sin City Bronco group. Had a really awesome build at SEMA, the orange Bronco. We call it Freedom Bronco. And he says BroncBuster versus Freedom Bronco. I say yes, let's do it. So
only if we can add versus Dana Bronco in there, yeah.
Let's do it. We actually, so Walter gave me a call today. We're cooking up something for King of the Hammers. I think Dave Cole called Walter. Let's come up with something fun for the Bronco group. I think you, me, and Walter, and we need to put our heads together and come up with a fun event that we can take the Broncos that have all been modified out and do something fun. So, anyways, thought I'd just throw that out there. Be kind of fun.
Yep.
Let's see. Life before work. I've seen 3 recent friends with blown front ring and pinions versus from stock to 37s. Have you heard from Ford why this has happened?
Well, the short answer is you can break anything. Mm-hmm. Literally, you can break it. You can break a Dana 60. It all depends upon how you wheel. I'm not sure if these are Model 190s, which are obviously weaker than the Model 210s, but either way, if they're blowing out ring and pinions, most likely what's happening is what we call an impact failure. An impact failure is when you have a wheel in the air and it's spinning real fast, and then it comes down and lands on whatever rock you're trying to get over, and it just stops. Like right now, you've got all that mass, wham, it stops. And it puts that huge shock load into the system, that impact load, and it just runs up the shaft. And it can break all kinds of things. It can break half shafts. It can break ring and pinions. It'll shear 2, 3, 4 teeth off the ring gear. Lots of damage that way. One of the things that I've noticed, being more of a Jeep guy at heart, that's where I got my start. One of the things that I've noticed with independent front suspension is they can start to hop. Mm-hmm. And anytime you start to hop in an independent front suspension, you need to get out of it. Stop.
You hop, you stop.
Back up. You hop, you stop. That's excellent. That should be somebody's motto. You hop, you stop.
I do. That's what I say all the time.
Got to get out of it, because if you don't and you continue to hop, you're gonna break parts. It's exactly how we broke the tie rod in ours. I've seen people break ring and pinions over and over and over again. If you're hopping, stop, back up, give it another shot, get a little more momentum, get a little more wheel speed. But you've got to get out of it when you start to hop, or you're gonna break parts.
So I can speak to one of these instances I believe he's talking about. I don't want to, it's a lady that I follow as well and I communicate with. And after talking to her and seeing, because she showed me pictures from the tech and everything, it appears to me, and what she even thinks is there was an impact a week or so previous on off-roading, because she has the plastic skid plates, didn't have the steel ones, possibly developed a leak. And where they had failure, she was going, I think, 65 down the highway, and everything seized up.
Oh yeah, when you have a seizure failure like that, that's a lack of oil. And
lack of oil, and that's what the tech said. I mean, it was so hot you could tell it seized up. So, there's always, like you said, you can break anything. Skid plates are an important thing for sure, and I think she learned that. She's going to be getting those, but that would definitely not be a failure more than it was, a lack of oil. So. Let's see. What do we got for another question? Justin, you got another? There we go. So Matt Attack KG12. What do you have to do for 3-inch body lift and aftermarket bumpers? Is each job custom to your relocation mounts? Work on those. So yeah, I'm sorry. I'll answer on this one. This one's going to be to me. So the reason why on the 3-inch body lift it doesn't work with aftermarket bumpers is every single bumper out there that's been made, aftermarket, is mounted different. We could spend our entire life coming up with brackets to relocate bumpers. And so a lot of these bumpers can be just as easy as drilling a hole to relocate it up. We've had guys successfully do that. We are working on a really cool design right now that will actually be a metal piece that for the 3-inch and the 1.5 inch, that when you lift up and you got that gap, it'll fit in around, it'll follow the contour of the Bronco. It'll give it some design feature, but it'll have a place for rock lights and pods, to where in the rear, we're going to actually have some places for some rock lights, and then also actually some amber lights that can be tied into the your running lights and stuff. So we're going to come up with some stuff that looks good, that doesn't require you to have to do a bunch of stuff on your aftermarket bumpers, but there's just nothing we can do on every single aftermarket bumper out there. Okay, Rob and Michelle White. Easy way to determine 190 versus 210 FDU by looking at a Bronco, and what are the key differences between these two?
All of the 190s are aluminum. I can tell you that right now. Yeah. So if your housing is aluminum, there's a good chance that it's a Model 190.
If you don't have lockers, you're probably.
If you don't have lockers, it's another dead giveaway that it's a 190. Your window sticker would be a good place to start. I believe that they call out the front drive unit differently for the Model 190 and the Model 220. The difference between the two, it's, if we take it to a simpler level, it's basically Dana 30 versus Dana 44. The Model 190 and the Model 220, the 190 and the 220 is the diameter of the ring gear. So you've got 190 millimeters versus 220 millimeters. And anytime you grow that ring gear diameter, everything about the axle gets bigger. The diff case gets bigger, the bearings get bigger, the pinion gets larger, the splines get larger, all of those good things that we like to get larger and stronger. That's the difference.
Okay. So reason I highlighted this next one from Aaron Moore. Aaron is a friend of mine here, local. So this is the guy that we're putting the 29 spline in the M190. So Aaron says, I don't think Bronco Fet will be ready for King of the Hammers. So tomorrow we're actually meeting. We're going to be installing some 29 splines that Dana sent, because that's not currently available. This is a test unit, correct, Zach? We're going to test these out before we.
Yeah, I mean, we have them. We're ready to release them to production. Right. We just thought we'd send you one of the first ones and have you put it in.
Okay, so we're going to be installing this, and so there will be options for the M190. Ultimately, I guess my question, Zach, and this is for everybody out there, but it's for me too. Then I never asked this before. Will those shafts will not work though in the M210? Will it? The 29 spline?
No, there's different shafts for the Model 210 versus the Model 190. And if you jump back to the picture, I can kind of show you the difference. Now, while they are both 29 spline, the Model 190 and the Model 210 from Ford, the reason they did it is to commonize the shaft. So technically, I'm pretty sure it's the passenger side. Technically, the passenger side shaft for the Model 190 and the Model 210 are the same when it's the 29 spline. The driver's side changes because of the length of the shaft that has to reach in and go into the center differential. So when you get the Spicer Extreme shafts, there is a difference between the Model 190 set and the Model 210 set if they're both 29 spline. Now, like I said, the passenger side will be exactly the same. The driver's side will be a little bit different. And that's the reason Ford compromised, if you will, on the diff spline on the Model 210, is so they could have that reduction in complexity. They only have to make 3 shafts instead of making 4 shafts for production.
Okay. Yeah. Will the Dana Spicer Bronco be at King of the Hammers? This is from Walter again.
I really hope so, Walter. That's the plan. My plan is to be there. My plan is to have the Bronco there. Hopefully a couple other ones. But that's the plan as it stands right now. I say that's the plan because last year I was on my way to King of the Hammers and we had a hellacious snowstorm here in the East Coast and all the airports got closed and I literally had to turn around and go home. I didn't get to go to KOH last year because I literally got snowed in.
So I see a little competition on Chocolate Thunder maybe for all of us.
Oh, let's go.
All right. Okay, you guys ever going to make it to Hollister Hills and go up Tank Trap? Anybody know where Hollister Hills is? I haven't heard that one. Sorry.
No, that's a new one on me.
No. You know what? We'd love to. Let's. It's one of those things that we can only be so many places at one time. And come January after our event, we're going to be at one event after another. And if it's somewhere in between, I'm always down for stopping and wheeling with you guys. So we'll see what we can do. What else we got? We got any other questions that we didn't answer before, Justin? Am I missing any? Let me see if I can scroll through a few of these.
Hey guys,
Yes.
I gotta go. I've got another commitment I gotta do.
Yeah, go take care of your kids. Well, we're gonna wrap it up here pretty soon. I just want to make sure I answered everything on the differential. Okay, yeah, here we go. Mark Borgman, you mentioned the upgraded steering rack that you're running with the 40s. Are you referring to the housing and bushing upgrade you sell? No. So what we're referring to is the new Ford Performance rack that will be released here shortly by Ford Performance. And that is, it's got about 30% stronger motor in it is the biggest increase. The housing is thicker. So there is some increase there too. And we do have the reinforcement parts already that we've modeled for that too, because there will need to be some support on that. So that's been taken care of. All right, I'm going to go ahead and remove Austin.
The diameter of the tie rods is a little bit larger too.
The diameter is about 2 millimeters, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's
so. And I'll tell you, because right now I'm testing it without any of my components because that's what we wanted to do, and it does make a big difference. So
absolutely, and I'm running it the same way. I don't have any support or any bushings in this
Right.
one or the clamps on it, and it's been doing great. So
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll find the limit at some point, but we haven't.
Oh yeah, I definitely will. I mean, and I've talked with them about that, but no, that's the one we're talking about. Is there any others that we missed? Maybe let's see, anything in the works for the Dana 60 for a Dana 60 FDU?
I can neither confirm nor deny the existence of a program to work on a Dana 60 FDU.
I like that. Okay, all right, you heard it here, guys. No confirmation. Will you be offering a standard? Oh, yes, this is one from Ken Boyd. So Ken Boyd has the whole setup. We're waiting on shipping to him. And one of his questions, and I think, Zach, you and I, we talked about this at one point, but will you be offering a standard U-joint yoke for the FDU? So
maybe not a U-joint yoke per se, perhaps a companion flange that's 1350 series U-joint compatible. That's something that already exists today that we offer.
Now, and that could go. We have that compatible for both on the front drive unit and on the
transfer case.
Transfer case, correct?
I know that I have the one for the front drive unit. I don't know that I have one for the front output of the transfer case, because the front drive shaft, as it doesn't change in angle, because it doesn't go up and down, even when you put long travel suspension on, the front axle doesn't move. So that's kind of the last piece of the puzzle that Dana's working on. We've got a rear drive shaft, the upgraded rear drive shaft that we're going to sell. And, we've got the rear axle and the front axle. But that front drive shaft, we're kind of waiting to see what the market is going to do. If there ends up being a lot of lift kits that, drop the whole front drive unit down so that angle does change and either gets beyond the angle of the CV joints or it gets beyond the length, because it's not a plunging shaft. It doesn't need to go in and out. It only needs to compress enough to be physically installed. So unfortunately, one of the things that can happen when you drop it like 3 inches, you've run out of travel on a shaft that doesn't have any travel.
Yep.
So basically,
and I can speak to that.
Having really nice engagement, you've essentially done this, and you're working on the tips, and it's real easy to shear. So that, like I said, that's something. If that's the way a lot of lift kit companies are going to go, then yeah, Dana's going to come out with a front drive shaft that'll solve that problem. Yeah,
and I can tell you guys, I have done a diff drop on my wife's that I'm running the 42-inch ones on with the 29 spline, and right now I have the drive shaft out completely while we're trying to figure out what we want to do, because with that angle change that Zach is talking about, it can't handle it. I've never broke one on BroncBuster, which we've never dropped the diff, right? We're running the extreme 32s. And so I think it's not a problem until that drops. But once it drops and it's in reverse, I mean, it doesn't happen going forward, but as soon as I put it in reverse on any kind of a load, it pops it, pulls those balls out, and it's done. So definitely going to be something. So 60 FDU or RDU, needed overkill. So I mean, like right now, like I said, in our Bronco, we're running the 32 spline, Dana 44 front, or the Ultimate Dana 44 front drive unit, and the semi-float Dana 60 on 40-inch tires, because you're not going to run 40-inch tires on the stock stuff for very long. So I don't know that any of those components that we have are overkill. I think it works really nicely as a system, up to and including 40-inch tires. Now, there are going to be people that go beyond that, because there always is. I mean, Tyler's already got a Bronco on 42s, and there's going to be more and more that continue on that. And like I said previously, you can break anything. Look at where the Jeep market's going. It's all LS swaps, it's all Hemi swaps, it's Demon swaps, it's Elephant swaps, and you're blowing Dana 60s out of those on the regular. So, it's going to creep into the Bronco as it gets more and more adoption, more vehicles in operation on the road. People are going to get crazy with their builds, and you're going to see these builds. The question is, can we
can we make something for them? Is it worth it to make it for the, that top of the 1% of the 1%? If I were to make a front, Dana 60 front drive unit, yeah, everyone says, yeah, I'd love to have it. How many are we really going to sell? So we start to see in the market that for some reason the front drive units that we've made and done a significant amount of testing on, that we get into a situation where we see that there may be not enough, then we'll look at what's next. What are the chances of breaking a diff once these upgraded CVs and FDUs are made? Well, like we said a little bit ago, you can break anything. And it has mostly to do with your driving style and not so much to do with the equipment that's under what you have. Like we talked about, if you hop, you got to stop. If you start to bounce, that's the worst possible thing you can do in independent front suspension, because you're going to tear something up. So, like I said, we haven't had a failure with our upgraded 32 spline in the front drive unit. It's been great.
So I'm just going to talk about this with Robert real quick. So Robert, I think what he's referring to is Drew, and a diff drop defeats the purpose of lift for wheeling. And I will agree with that to a point. The reason why I did it on this one was because I was literally replacing CVs almost every week, because it, with that angle with the stock CVs, before we got these upgraded ones, it couldn't handle it. So we did that. And I did it knowing that I was going to lose some inches there. However, where it sits with the diff drop and your skid plate is in a point where I don't hardly ever, especially running 40-inch tires, I've never once hit that skid plate right there yet, even with the drop. And I thought I would. So I agree with you, and that was my concern. But so far, it's actually worked out pretty well for me. So, Justin, you see any others that I'm missing? I think we about covered everything. Guys, if somebody sees something that I've missed, hurry up and message us, because I think we're about ready to wrap up the section here on with Dana. And let's see, Dana 60 FDU seems like no benefit if the hubs are the limiting factor.
Well, exactly, and that's one of the sticking points. If we were to look into that, is we'd have to think about you got to make a knuckle for it, and that knuckle would have to house like a Super Duty or a Raptor front hub unit. And you have to think about these things as a system. I can't just pitch a 60 front drive unit, which doesn't exist, into the market and say, here you go, because what's going to work with it? Nothing. So we have to think about that as an entire system. Could we come up with something and then, come up with even larger half shafts, and it's got to be able to have a larger spline at the hub unit. So you got to change a hub unit. We change a hub unit, you got to change the knuckle. So, and if you're going to change the knuckle, you might as well make a lift knuckle, so that, it puts it in a better spot, and it corrects some of the geometry. And then, do you go with a Super Duty knuckle? Do you go with, whatever, hub unit?
Yeah.
And then you can go with a full float rear axle, because now you can control, if you will, the bolt pattern. So, and all of those things let you run bigger brakes. You can put you can put Super Duty brakes on the front. When you make that knuckle, you make it so you can hang a Super Duty caliper on the knuckle instead of this standard Bronco caliper. And then you can put some gigantic, 14-inch disc brake, dual piston caliper stuff on the rear, to match some of those, gigantic tires that you're going to have. So
before I go to this next one, guys, we are here in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to have SSBC. They're an American-made brake company out of New York. They make some awesome stuff for the Super Duties, and we are working with them on getting some really good aftermarket brakes, because now we're putting these bigger tires. These brakes are not adequate, I can tell you, for safely. So we're working through that. It's not something I've really talked about on here yet, but it came up. But I want to talk about this for Aaron. So Aaron has the M190, and he does not have lockers. Does he have an option for putting lockers in that after the fact, or no?
There's not a locker that fits in the Model 190 housing. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you ever take a Model 190 apart, the first thing you're going to see is the ring gear is laser welded to the diff case. So it's not bolted to the diff case like you would see a traditional ring and pinion that's bolted to there. So they redesigned the diff case and the ring gear so that there are no bolts. It's actually welded. So if you want to change the gears in a Model 190, you literally have to throw the diff away, and you've got to get another one. Okay. I think there are some what we call rest of world parts, meaning they're on vehicles in other parts of the world on the Ranger platform that have a bolted 190 and the, a slightly expanded gear ratio, not anywhere near what we've got in the Model 210. That was a really long way of saying technically could you do it? Possibly, but there's still no locker. It would still be an open diff case, and you don't have the gear choice that you have with the front with the aftermarket front.
Well, and I'll say even at that, once you get it, your chances now with being locked of breaking that aluminum housing is greatly increased. Wouldn't you agree? Because that stress is just not going to hold up to it.
So. Right, and I don't know if there are aftermarket lockers for the 190. I haven't seen it, but it doesn't mean that there's
somebody could. I'm sure
somebody could. Exactly right, but if it's not something that I would personally do. If you're going to put the money into a front drive unit, go as big as you can. Get into either the 29 spline or the 32 spline front drive unit and do it once, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Okay. I'm not familiar with shock-proof diff fluid. So somebody asked, are you familiar with it? And is it worth running?
It's not something I've ever heard of. We as Dana, we have a lot of companies that come to us and they want to sell us their additive package. And I haven't been impressed by anything in the last 10 years or so. At Dana, we use a 75-140 full synthetic lubricant that is really pretty outstanding, that we use it in all of our axles. And we've never had a fluid-based failure in the field for any of our axles. So,
okay. Let's see. I think we got everything. Everybody's saying thanks, and Zach, I do want to tell you thanks. I can't tell you how much this helps me to be able to get out to all of the guys out there in the Bronco community that we talk to. Answers a lot of questions for us. And so thank you for your time tonight. It's been very valuable. I've learned even some more that I didn't realize before. And every time I talk to you, I learn more. So thank you. I am going to, so I'll go ahead and let you go, Zach. Appreciate your time. And we'll be talking soon.
Yeah, happy to be a part of it. We need to do this again. And if for the people that are on the call, if you see us out on the trail, we're just regular folks, just like you. Come up and say hello.
He is one of the coolest guys to wheel with, guys. I can tell you that. So
thank you. Just if you see us out wheeling somewhere, hey, just come over, ask us where we're going, because we're always going somewhere.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Zach.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Okay, so guys, before we end here, I did want to do one last plug for Wheeling for a Cause, because we are down to a limited amount of time. We've had a huge amount of support and people coming out, but we haven't made it to where our goal is to cover everything that we need to for this build for TJ. So if you haven't had a chance, I encourage you to go on our website for the Wheeling. You can go on BroncBusterTX.com and there's a link, or you can go directly to wheelingforacause.org. Learn the why. We're not only just trying to help this guy, but we have also got So Others May Live, which is a nonprofit organization, and Camp Freedom, which is another great nonprofit that we're helping with. So great cause. And guys, it's going to be a lot of fun. We've got some stuff cooking. We've got a guy here in Texas that has one of the first successful solid axle swap Broncos. So 6th gen Bronco, he's bringing it. We're going to have a little bit of a competition between IFS versus solid axle. So you won't want to miss that. That'll be a fun thing. And we'll have, we've got other people there. There's going to be other people in the off-road community being part of it. We've got Martha Tanzi. In fact, next week, Martha Tanzi, if you're not sure who she is, her and her daughter Ellie are great supporters of this cause too. They've been reaching out to people. They are on the TV show Mountain Men. and she lives up in Alaska. Been talking with her quite a bit this week, and they've been getting hammered with snow. And even through all of that shoveling out and stuff they're doing, she's been making phone calls and helping to reach out. We've also had a lot of great help from Walter. I appreciate Walter's help in reaching out to people too, and then all of you guys. But again, if you haven't registered yet, please do it now so that we can make all the final plans. If you are somebody that can help donate, we are looking for more than just supporting and coming to the event, which is a big part of it. We'd also like, we need more donations that can help get this, to pull this to the finish line as well. And we're looking forward to it. It's going to be a great year. I absolutely love what's going on. The coming out with the new Bronco has been a great time. Coming to these events and being a part of community and being able to be with you guys has been awesome. And that's what it's about. So look forward to more stuff with you guys, and we'll talk to you next week. Again, next week, you won't want to miss it. We'll have Martha on, and we're going to update you on some of our new products on the top. We've got that design has come a long ways, so we'll have some stuff to show you there for the hard top. We also have come a long ways with our Project X light bar that is going to look really killer. We've kind of done it in a little bit different variation that some of the other guys out there have done. Also, some other light bars that will give you some good lighting for off-road. Specifically, when I've been working, we really want to get out as soon as possible, and that's the solution for the body lift. And so there's next week's going to be fun. We're gonna be able to bring to you some of the stuff that Martha and some of the conversation and things that she's done, and because she's not just on a TV show about living out in the wilderness and hunting. She's an actual wheeler, and she's done builds, and she loves going off road. I met her at SEMA, and she was in the FX booth. Really, really cool lady, and a big help with what we're doing. So again, guys, we'll see you next week, same time, 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern, and hopefully you guys can be there again. So talk to you guys later.